Welcome everybody to Wednesday Live. We've got Dr. Jabari Whitehead with us today to
Good evening,
talk
everyone.
about, yes, good evening. We're here to talk about the journey to authentic leadership. So grateful that you're here, Jabari.
I'm so happy to be here, Janice. I'm very excited, happy to share. A great time.
Thank you. Thank you. I know any interaction I have with you is always a learning opportunity. So I had to open it up to others and share your wisdom a little bit. So can you just give us, I mean, your background is incredible. Could you give us some highlights?
Yeah, sure. I think the first part is that I'm a proud father. Family first all the time. So proud father of two children, and married to my incredible wife, Krista. Uh, as far as my background goes, I grew up in the city of Chester for my formal years. I'm a Catholic school kid, except for a little bit of time in public school, a couple years in high school, and then after that, got my bachelor's elementary education and my master's in educational leadership, and also my doctorate in educational leadership focused on social cognitive theory and leadership framework. So that's where I'm at right now, and I've been an administrator from grades K through 12 at high school, middle school. It's my second run at an elementary school, which I love. And
Yes.
other than that, just really enjoying life and what I'm doing.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh, you are amazing, and your commitment to continual growth and the way in which you adopt and implement a lot of the things that you're going to share with us tonight are it's remarkable. So we're talking about here the journey to authentic leadership.
Mm.
Tell me about that. Like, tell me, what does that mean to you? And before we even jump into
Mm.
that, why don't we set our intention for our time together?
Well, I think it's really important you can't really get involved in leadership of others without really understanding yourself. I think that's really critical. Uh, Being authentic just deals with a lot of vulnerability. And to get to that point is it's one of those things you have to understand or reframe things that happen in your life. And I firmly believe, and I've heard more recently, Ed Millett made this comment on a podcast I listened to about how things happen for you and not to you.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, everything happens for us, but not to us. And I give you some examples. Uh, as far as vulnerability, as I grew up in Chester, and I had a great childhood in terms of loving parents, but along the way in our upbringing in the urban area, being vulnerable would have been seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of grew up with frenemies. You
Mm-hmm.
never know if you're playing sports or hanging out with them, if they were going to be your friends or be trying to jump you later on. So
Right.
that was part of our life. A lot of my childhood friends are no longer around, either dead or in prison or just lost their mind or socially dead. So it's most of my friendships end up being through my family members
Mm-hmm.
and through the church growing up
Yep.
with my family attending pretty regularly. Then along the way, as far as leadership goes, up through high school, and I really just got involved in sports and try to build a shell around me. At one point, to I really just got involved in the weight training because
Mm-hmm.
of the football and the wrestling and all the sports. But a large part of that was a belief to be able to protect myself. At age 16, 17, my junior year of high school, or that summer, uh, there was a friendship that didn't go well, and I ended up being jumped and attacked at that age, that summer, that caused some pretty significant damage. And at that point, it was a crossroad, a fork in the road. I had to make a difference and make a choice whether to still hang out in the neighborhood I grew up in
Mm-hmm.
or time to go off in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those things that really never got reconciled
Yeah.
until I was able to move on and just dedicate my time to my future. But at that point, it was I really got involved in the training to promise myself that that would never happen to me again, that
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have those fears anymore. So that played a large role in it. And again, I wasn't interested in being showing any kind of vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I just had opportunity to continue to go through self examination at that point. In the college, I continued to play sports, and then I coached football. But I also got caught up in the false masculinity, I would say. The early 20s, late teens, early 20s of Gym Tan Laundry. I know if you guys know MTV. I worked as a bouncer and
GTL.
and really just GTL. So really just making sure that it was about clubs, parties, hanging out. So you never really get a chance to learn who you are at that point because it's about the outward appearance and the superficial nature.
Yeah.
As you continue to put that shell around you. And then it wasn't until I found the opportunity and my purpose to get involved in teaching and learning. I was a second grade teacher and a fourth grade teacher in my teaching career. And it was coaching sports as well. So that played a large part. I finally became an administrator during the year 2007.
Yep.
An assistant principal at a middle school level. And at that point, that's when I really continued to grow and evolve in leadership, I thought. And I had my master's classes along the way. So I learned a lot during that time frame. But it was really more, after my master's, really more like regurgitating text material. And at this point, I would say I have so much more to unlearn, and I had to unlearn a lot to become and get involved in the leadership, the leader I am today.
Mm-hmm. And Jabari, did you find that you were putting on a persona of like student or leader, but there were parts of you that were still, the previous version of yourself?
Yeah, I give an example. Like it was pretty much win. It was all win. Win at all costs from sports. If you think of Herman Boone from Remember the Titans, we're gonna be perfect in every aspect of the game.
Yeah.
so
right.
if you have that, it was that kind of intensity that when I first became a leader, the message was what gets monitored gets done. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it was data.
Right.
And so I'm coming out of school and finishing up my master's and making that transition. And early in my leadership career as assistant principal, I really was more of, if I knew it was the right thing to do for kids and I had evidence to support it, it was you either going to come with me or you're going to get run over. And, I wasn't malicious. It wasn't I wouldn't consider myself a bully or anything at that point. I just think that because I had a specific plan, I had the ambition, I had the drive, that if it was the right thing to do for kids, then we're going to do it regardless. And I didn't take into account at that time my relationship with teachers. I didn't take it to the account about what it meant to really understand the human side and the significance, because I believe we had a job to do. And I really didn't understand the need to embrace love, because it was always more about respect at that point. So that went on for some time, and it showed up in various areas. Even when I became a elementary building principal, some of these things came up again in terms of reared their ugly head, I would say, in terms of the leadership behaviors.
Absolutely. So what was the drive at that point? To win, to be a success, to what do you think was?
Well, I would say there's a double-edged sword. So growing up, we're always taught, especially in the Black community, growing up young, we're constantly taught by our families that you have to work 2 to 3 times as hard. And you're constantly proving yourself, and it's constant. Whether you're proving yourself in your neighborhood, proving yourself at work, proving that you belong. So, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. So I think the good piece of it, I understand about being committed, understand about conviction, understand about drive. But success doesn't exist in a vacuum. I mentioned that before. And I heard as well that if you are alone at the top, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening along the way, I give you an example where I had the year of, it was 2014. It was probably, I was a principal of elementary school. And during that time, we worked on many initiatives. It was, we put in a learning garden at the school, which was good for kids. Great idea. We had committee meetings. we involved the parents, we involved all these people. However, I did the involving. I don't know how much listening I really did. I
Mm-hmm.
remember at one point I was trying to push it forward, and the teachers explained to me how they were not ready, and I think I was immature in my leadership at the time, and really did not. I don't think I really handled it that well. We
Mm-hmm.
end up having the learn to guard put in place, which is great for kids, but I'm not too sure it was able to be sustained beyond the time after I left. Really haven't kept track of that. But
Sure.
while it was a great thing, I mean, there was Whole Kids. I mean, Whole Food Market, the Whole Kids Foundation got involved. We won a grant for that. That was one thing, and then there were other initiatives that were going very well, and I was doing well in my doctoral work. I just was starting that, so everything's going well. And
Mm-hmm.
also that year, I was nominated for the Major League Baseball Target People Magazine Teacher Award.
I'm gonna share that with
Yeah,
everybody. Yeah.
yeah. So I was a finalist for that. It was a great opportunity. A parent first nominated, put out the nomination, and there was voting that went into place.
Mm-hmm.
However, there was still something wrong. There was something missing. Again, I ended up being more out in front of these initiatives
Mm-hmm.
and not really walking with people.
Yeah.
And I think that I didn't have the strongest relationships possible because even with good intentions, it just wasn't working out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the ambition in that time, that same year that award was in play, was a terrible year health wise for me.
Oh.
Uh, I think it was a couple because I was about 2 years into my doctoral work at that
Mm-hmm.
point, and I wasn't sleeping, so I was studying. I would go to work. If there's a night event, I would stay in my office after the night event was over to write. Krista would tell you I was there were times I actually slept at the building because I would work. I didn't sleep. I worked through the night in my office
Yeah.
because I just had my head down and
Mm-hmm.
just to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there plenty of times. I was in the library till from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. after classes. I was doing spreading myself thin with all the agendas, I mean, all the initiatives that we had in play, and I really at that point had not delegated any kind of real leadership power. I mean, I even had there was a principal advisory council at the building that I was at,
Yeah.
and we met, but I still don't think I used them or work with them in the manner in which I wasn't the best leader I could have been.
Sure.
Long story short, because this is significant, there was a day I was at the building, and it was the day that we were supposed to go down. My family we were supposed to go down to Citizens Bank Park to be
Mm.
recognized with the other two finalists on the field, go to batting practice, meet the players, and and then also we were going to, we had great seats, and it
Yeah.
was PR. It would have been a great opportunity.
Yeah.
That day, I end up coming to work, and you could literally see my chest, like a pulse in my chest. I'm wearing a suit, so you can see like the lapel is raising over and over again, and it just don't feel normal. I got chest pressure, and I was working out consistently. I was still doing CrossFit at the time, but I think my eating, lack of sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and just stress, not focusing on what's most important, really put me in a bad spot. So I ended up going to the nurse's office inside our elementary school. Go to
Yeah.
the nurse's office, and at that point, I'm still stubborn. And our secretary goes to me, and I end up we go to urgent care. I
Yeah.
end up at urgent care, and urgent care, I have an irregular EKG, and at that point, it was time to go to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go to the ER, but the whole time I'm trying to convince myself and the urgent care people, and I'm trying to hide it from Krista so
Yeah.
she doesn't find out. I still want to have this great experience for
Mm-hmm.
our family, or I
So we're
just
still
find
going to
believe.
the game. Yeah. You're
Yeah,
like, oh no, no, we're still going to the game.
yeah. Ryan Holiday talks about the ego is the enemy, so I
Mm-hmm.
would say definitely was the enemy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I end up going through all these things, end up at the ER. While I'm at the ER, I'm working on an assignment for my doctoral class, I had my laptop in my lap at the hospital, or doing the word process, working on a paper. So at this point, the nurse and doctor trying to convince me I need to give up the laptop. I'm trying to finish up the work because I think that's most important. And from that point, my father finally came to the hospital. And, even though I'm 40 years, I'm 46 now, but even though I was in my 40s at that time, I still have a tremendous respect for my dad.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Sometimes you have to bring in the big guns,
yeah, once he came in, it was time to put the laptop away and shut it down. But I ended up having to be on a cardiac unit for a couple of days or so. And I'm in a room with a guy who's in his 70s, who it was like his 7th or 8th time on a cardiac unit. Yeah, that picture of my daughter, she was terrified to even come over to me with all the wires in my chest at the hospital. And my dad's over in the background, keeping his eye on me, making sure that I stay at the hospital. But so having the wrong focus, having a wrong understanding of what leadership really is, carried me in the wrong direction, both mentally, physically, and I would say even spiritually.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, and so were there signs before you had your legs taken out from under you and you were in a hospital bed hooked up to machinery? Like, were there signals before that you ignored?
There were signals. I just think I was deflecting, making sure it was a focus on, it's about meeting goals and achieving. So there was a sign where I really had when you're in leadership, you have some allies, you have some your staff members who are truly behind you, and you want to make sure you're listening to those people. And I remember at one point there was definitely a poorly timed conversation I had with a teacher. She was a really outstanding teacher, and I was trying to make a point about a learning project that was in her class. It just wasn't the time, and I didn't understand the weight of the conversation. And so the teacher came down to my office like midday after I made this comment to her earlier in the day, as if she didn't have enough to do.
Yeah.
And she ended up coming to my office, and we spoke about it. And she helped me understand that she knows I have the information, I'm credible, I'm knowledgeable. However, the fact that I don't appreciate the moment of where we are, appreciate and celebrate the small victories, really was eye-opening to me, because it didn't make sense, because I was still going through continuing to improve myself, or prove myself to others that I belong.
Sure.
The other one, I think it was a wake-up call too, where I was going to leave the school to go to another school closer to home because we had 2 young children. And at that point, I went through an interview process, became the candidate for a local elementary school not too far from where we live. It would have been maybe a 5-10 minute drive. And there were some unethical things that occurred during that time. And again, these things happen for us, not to us.
Yep.
But because I don't believe I was the best leader at that time anyway to take on this new role. But the unethical incident involved a trusted colleague, a teacher, to the point where it came out that the teacher had gotten in contact with the interview panel somehow, some way, which usually doesn't happen. And it was just some negative feelings that came out, which resulted in me having to withdraw my name from that particular job, opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, the gift in that was learning experience. So the superintendent at the time had offered, because she heard about the incident with the teacher, the superintendent in the district I was in offered to move the teacher out of my building. And while I think that if I wasn't beginning to learn about myself more, I probably would have been in support of that. But I think at that moment, it was like, no, I think that a teacher or an employee or anyone, they have a right to feel how they feel.
Sure.
I can't tell them how they should feel. And that's maybe how that person felt on the other end of my leadership. And so at the time, I had to look inward and really understand who I am and why that is that way. And I decided to leave the teacher at our building because I didn't want to send a message to other teachers that
Sure.
didn't have the right to speak up or talk or have a conversation,
Yeah.
because we're in this together and we're walking together. But again, I wasn't the best. So there were subtle signs along the way. Right
Mm-hmm.
out of the classroom, when I was a teacher, I taught in New Jersey. Right out of the classroom, once I got finished my master's, I was a finalist for a elementary building job.
Mm-hmm.
I went through all the interviews, and then the superintendent and assistant superintendent sat me down and decided to reopen the interview process afterwards. So my pride was hurt at the time, but
Sure.
that was a long time ago. That was clearly I wasn't ready. But
Yes.
back then I used to reject and reject, and even I worked for a superintendent who I did not agree with at the time. But
Mm-hmm.
she made a comment about like some of the accolades, some of the programs or initiatives. She was wondering whether or not that was really for the school, for serving the community, or for myself. Now I can tell you, after the work I put in and the team, what I thought I did,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I really felt insulted. But
Sure.
at the same
Question
time,
your intentions.
now that I have gotten, I would say wiser. Chris is not here, so
Yeah.
I can say I'm wiser now. So, but I think at that point, if I look back at that moment, I wasn't ready. I wasn't fully developed. I was maybe just going through the motions,
Sure.
and I definitely know that I'm better around, better for it.
Absolutely. And I find it ironic that here you are in a doctoral program studying leadership methodologies and principles, right? And then you're given these life experiences. And I love your philosophy of how things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Mm.
And it was like you were in the University of Life while you were,
Yeah.
in university, earning your doctoral degree. So, like, what are some of the frameworks or tools that
Mm.
you acquired along the way that have helped to guide you in your
Mm.
your
Yes.
introspection and your self-efficacy?
Well, I will truly tell you there were three pieces right off the back, and I know there'll be hopefully we're making this available, the pieces available to the audience at a later point. But
Yeah.
three pieces really, I would say, shifted my mindset and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a video. By the way, I feel like the doctoral work is more about the journey, right? Just like anything else. The end result, there is no end in learning, so there's no
Mm-hmm.
deadline with this. But at that point, watch the IDEO shopping cart video. It was about the design group in Silicon Valley,
Yes,
and I
yes.
remember watching it, and it was the enlightened trial and error triumphs over the thoughts of the lone genius. And I
Yes.
am 1,000%, 100% guilty of being an idea guy. Let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you what kind of jerk I was. Let me explain this, right? I thought it was so bright that I would go in and observe a teacher early in my career.
Yeah.
As the lesson is going on, in my head, I start to think about how to reconfigure the lesson so when I meet with the teacher afterwards, I can share and show
Yeah.
a different way it could have been done.
Uh-huh.
I, it's a good thing that we are constantly changing as human beings. I'm
Yes.
glad people don't hold me to my old self.
You're right.
So thank you and forgive me
Well,
for that.
yeah, I can't imagine there's anyone among us right now that doesn't feel the same way.
So it was kind of ascending. It was something. That was something special. That Jabari was something else.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was Brene Brown's Power of Vulnerability TED Talk.
Yes. Yes.
Just kicked you in the chest.
Oh, I know.
It
Doesn't matter how
really
many times you watch that thing.
right.
There's always something that resonates at that time.
Yeah, and I think at that point it helped. She talks about shame,
Yes.
and I felt through my life there's a lot of pieces of me. Again, I had to deal with myself. There's a lot of pieces that I dealt with shame,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's feeling that I was undeserving, feeling I was not the best version of myself,
Mm-hmm.
um, any sense of uncertainty, and just again, I think a lot of it came from continuing to try to prove myself and gain
Sure.
respect.
Sure.
Because I felt like I was never living up to what I was called to be. But Brene Brown and her phrase "Be brave, not perfect" I've been carrying that with me
Mm-hmm.
since I heard those words.
Yes.
And literally, my daughter, she painted a rock I've shared that with our children as well. We have a rock painted. If you come to our house, and you'll see a big rock painted with "Be Brave, Not Perfect" on it,
Yeah.
because again, that really let me know I don't need to have all the answers. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to fall. I'm going to get back up and restart again and continue to grow from there. But be brave, not perfect, just gives you a sense of freedom to
Totally.
look within yourself and take risk. And, because otherwise you will never know or transform into who you need to become.
Ah,
So
totally.
that made a big difference.
Yeah.
And that kind of led me into having feedback groups with my staff to get an
Yeah.
understanding of how am I being perceived as a leader. Try to get real feedback and good, bad, or indifferent,
Mm-hmm.
so I can grow from there.
Yeah.
So that was and then Liz Wiseman, multipliers and diminishers.
Yes.
That you
Yes.
don't want to be, and this could be a parent, a friend. It's talked about the accidental diminisher, but the multiplier, every time you interact with a multiplier, you feel built up. You
Yeah.
feel as that you can conquer anything, that you can achieve. Your self-efficacy is high. You're able to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
The diminisher is the condescending
Mm-hmm.
approach, the very managerial
Mm-hmm. And the
approach.
jealous,
I
right?
think the jealousy, the ego,
Right.
I think
Yeah.
plays a large part in that, and the competitive nature is
Mm-hmm.
involved in that as
Sure.
well. And so I think that those pieces really help. But when I lived my research looking at transformational leadership and its effect on self-efficacy across all fields, it's really self-efficacy is really contextual. We're not confident. None of us are confident in all things,
Yeah.
but I think at the same time there's four components to transformational leadership that when you put those together with self-efficacy, it really raises the capacity of the people that you lead. So
Yeah.
I'll name them if you don't mind, and
Yeah.
just to,
Please.
just
Let's
to
let's
run
jump
run
in.
through. Inspirational motivation is this is Bernard Bass's work.
Mm-hmm.
So inspirational motivation is basically being able to inspire others that you have a particular vision, and
Mm-hmm.
people want to either emulate you. Then you have idealized influence, which is charisma, and you're
Mm-hmm.
forward thinking. You have a vision, and again, it kind of goes back to being able to engage and connect. And intellectual stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
The role of a leader is to make sure everyone has opportunity to be prepared for the next step, to benchmark themselves, to understand the best practices, the new strategies, to be able to provide stimulating conversation, understandings, a stimulating goal that people could take a look at and get behind.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then the last part, and this was really big in the research, and it makes sense for like Maslow's hierarchy as well, is individual consideration.
Mm.
That no matter what, that you know who this person is, that you know your people no matter what.
Okay.
And then now you take those four pieces, and then you move over to Albert Bandura's work of the social cognitive theory
Mm-hmm.
that deals with self-efficacy. So with self-efficacy, there is the mastery experiences, basically giving people opportunity to experiment, to learn and grow and fail and reiterate and put
Yeah.
out again. Then you have vicarious experiences, and that's the opportunity for people to see like-minded individuals or people in the same position be successful
Yeah.
at whatever the task that may be. Then there's verbal persuasion. Our words have so much power, so much
Mm.
power. Case in point, I once said to a teacher that I was talking about the different types of assessments,
Mm-hmm.
and I mentioned that, or of learning, that there's authentic learning, realistic learning, there is summative, formative. So there's those pieces. When I was talking about that, I was talking about the types of assessment,
Mm-hmm.
the types of learning experiences. What the
Sure.
teacher took away from it was that I was saying that we don't do any authentic teaching.
Ah.
And that you can imagine that.
Yeah.
So I made the mistake of assuming we were speaking the same language.
Mm-hmm.
I made that particular mistake. So, and then again, with verbal persuasion is what energy you're bringing to the room. What are your words to people?
Yeah.
Are they carefully selected, or are you just having the verbal
Mm-hmm.
vomit?
Sure.
Just blabbing, and sometimes I feel like I sound like John Belushi, Animal House. But again, then the last part here is the somatic, physiological, emotional state, and that's the stress and the anxiety and the feelings.
Yeah.
So when you put those together, if you pay attention to those four components of self-efficacy, and those are mediated by being using transformational leadership as your default.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I might be a little naive in my career,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to a point where I default to transformation leadership. I default to trusting people. I
Yeah.
trust my people
Yeah.
because I think that's the only way we can grow together. And if I'm espousing for myself that I'm going to be brave, not perfect, then
Mm-hmm.
that lends to other people as well. They have the right to do the same.
For sure. So could you just review those four again? Because go ahead.
Which for the
Because
self
I
efficacy?
had the four eyes,
Okay,
the
so
self
the
efficacy
self
ones.
self efficacy is mastery experiences,
Mm-hmm.
vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion,
Mm-hmm.
and the somatic, physiological, emotional state.
Okay. And for those who aren't quite familiar with what self efficacy is,
Mm-hmm.
can we just
Okay.
take a step back and
Mm-hmm.
clarify that?
Yeah, self efficacy is anyone's belief or understanding of their ability to achieve a given task or a goal. So if you want to be able to make sure, if I told someone, hey, go pick up if I told someone to go pick up 500-pound barbell off the floor and they just started working out with the weights or a lighter weight, it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't make sense. If
Yeah.
I give you an example, a lot of times there are teachers in other industries where people go to a half day professional development
Mm-hmm.
and then they're expected to turn around and perform proficiently at that particular task.
Yeah.
It just does not
Right. You
work.
had the 30-minute training.
Yeah, 30-minute training. I'm going to do this for a year and perform. I know Jay Shetty talks about learn. It's 5 stages of levels of growth, and it's usually learn. It's like learn, uh, experiment, perform, struggle, and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if you've seen enough, that we go through learn the limit of learning, then go perform,
Yeah.
struggle, and then thrive. But it's usually struggle and evaluate you, and then tell
Yeah.
you, and then you, the person that worked with you just doesn't feel that great
Mm-hmm.
about because whenever there's change, I know we're asking teachers or anyone that works with us to be incompetent for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been around enough teachers, they're very much A type
Yeah. Yeah. They
personality
want
and
to.
need to have control.
Yes.
So some of these things don't resonate that well with them when you're
Mm-hmm.
asking them to take that kind of a risk, and that's where the trust comes into play.
Right.
Um,
And
and
you
so,
believing in them, like you seeing what you believe their potential is,
mm,
and that you're giving them opportunities to learn and really trying to drive their own confidence
mm,
and their new view of themselves, right? Like
mm,
that they have the capacity to do that. I think
yeah,
that's part of what I'm hearing you say as a
yeah.
leader.
And well, I'll tell you, this goes for everybody. I know I've mentioned teachers, but I had an experience last year. We had a situation in our building where we had a bathroom in our wing that on the first floor wing that overran and had sewer problem.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. Let's just say there was
During the
some.
day, was this like a
It,
school
it
day?
was during the school day, and
This
there
couldn't
was
happen in July, right?
a
No.
little bit of brown water. So let's
Yeah.
just leave it
Oh,
at that.
jeez.
So, but here's what I tell you: my head custodian, she didn't wait for me. She didn't come ask me what should she do. This woman, shout out to Denise.
Yeah.
This woman who loves our school, she hopped up, just yelled at me. She's got to empty out the lower end. And remember, it was my first year in the building. I didn't question what she meant. I didn't guess what she was talking about. I just
Yeah.
followed her lead. Now, mind you, I'm supposed to be, I'm the principal. Suppose my ego was in place, and I held her back and said, "Hold on."
Yeah.
I,
I'll make the
but,
call.
yeah.
Yeah.
So suppose that happened. She
Mm-hmm.
was able to get down to that side of the building, get those kids and teachers evacuated. They were already headed out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me time to go help out with the other part of that wing to move them on.
Yeah.
and move forward. And there was a trusted plan. Those teachers, they didn't argue with the head custodian. They didn't ask. They knew they trust. So it's one of those things when you have great people, you just got to get out of their way and let them do what they need to do. And the same time this year, we had an issue where her and spotted a fire that potentially started in our cafeteria. And again, it was a spark electrical thing. So she ends up pulling a fire alarm. She didn't wait for me. She didn't ask me what. She just did it, and we followed a plan. So everyone, if you trust and show love and gratitude, then what ends up happening is that you're going to get leadership moments. You're going to get bravery. There's so many initiatives over my career, and especially where I'm at now, that the teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, all custodians, they have it's food. Even my cafeteria supervisor, all these people have these phenomenal ideas that I am fortunate enough to serve with and grow. And because I'll get feedback about myself as a school leader.
Yeah.
But I have a supportive community, and I have great people, and I just let them do what they need to do, and I have to be their cheerleader. That's
a great example, because that's like one of those unexpected things that it's unsafe. So you have to make a call, and you put people first. And of course, you wish that didn't happen, but it happened. And Denise took the ball, and you said go go go. Yeah. And you did your part, right? So that's operating like a team, and that's a demonstration of a functional operating unit, which not all of us have those experiences.
Well, I wanted to get in touch, but for people, if the self-efficacy has a 1.27 effect size.
Yeah.
So it's like you're getting 100% return on your money plus a little bit more. But for whatever reason, across industries, we don't allow that to occur. We don't focus on that. We don't build that up. And if anybody ever seen Kung Fu Panda, I can explain really what self-efficacy is in this whole piece. So Kung Fu Panda, Lego Movie's a great one. Wreck-It Ralph, you'll get it. So let's talk about the Po is a Kung Fu Panda.
Okay.
Po, he loves eating noodles. His father is a stork. Look at he doesn't look very confident. He's not really sure of himself. And but he loves kung fu. He loves fighting. He's a big fan of it, but he just doesn't know what to do with himself. He's trying to find himself. So finally, Po goes through this transformation. He ends up accidentally, but Lord Oogway said there is no accident. Lord Oogway is a turtle at the Shaolin Temple.
So you're a father of young children.
Absolutely. So Lord Oogway is he's like the visionary, and basically he invites Po and commands Lord Chifu to train Po. Okay. Chifu doesn't really want to because he already has a selection who should have been this dragon warrior. This very sacred warrior that's going to protect the village and the community.
Yeah.
So basically, Po gets master experiences because he's being trained with the 4 other fighters at the temple. Lord Chifu realized that he must train him because he has to become what he needs to be to protect his village. Otherwise, he's going to be doomed. So at that point, he moves from that position. Then he has that vicarious experience where he actually goes out and fights alongside the other fighters from the temple. Yep. And at that point, his confidence begins to grow. Lord Chifu finds out he's Kung Fu Panda. Po is motivated. He finds a way to motivate him. And then after that, verbal persuasion. There's this time Lord Oogway sits with Po, and Chifu finally shows, and they have this conversation, and he starts to reveal that you can really do this. And then you see that with the verbal persuasion, he had the vicarious experience, he had the master experience. He's been out there fighting, he's growing, he's training, and then finally, he feels great about himself, and his somatic physiological state finally ends up coming to a place and he returns to the Dragon Warrior, and now he's all powerful and he can defeat his opponent and save the village.
Wow! So here he goes from this, like shy, insecure, and doesn't know what power he has, to this
the Dragon Warrior. Yes,
Dragon Warrior. Yeah.
And there's a scroll in the movie that's kind of analogous to looking inward. There's a scroll that everyone finally has all the answers, and they pull the scroll down. They open up the scroll, and the scroll is blank. So everything that is from within, he's
Yeah.
always had this within him. So if you look at Lego movies, very similar because you have Emmett, who's the special, who needs to become the special.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of
So
great
that
pieces here.
like
But
that wisdom is within you, that trust yourself, that you're more powerful than you think, right? And like that
love
you have
yourself.
much more potential than any of us typically give ourselves credit for. And love yourself.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's love yourself and love others. I
Yes.
heard that loud and clear in your examples about being in the building and how you see people and treat people with respect and love and dignity. You've got our employees are only as great as we empower them to be. Go Poe. That's right. Thank you, Ruth. So you have a lot of models that you have shared with me over the time we've known each other. There is another one that I think has some of these components that those of us who are
Yes.
leading people, a lot of the things that you're sharing with us, we can use for our own leadership of our lives, our leadership as parents or, siblings or children or whatever roles that we have. And when we're leading other people, like in a business setting.
Yes. So you're speaking of Kouzes and Posner's
Yes.
leadership practices inventory, leadership challenge.
Yes.
So I know they have the 5th edition out, and there's five pieces. So you have and they're very similar to the ideas that are in the transformational leadership components of modeling the way. Basically, well, for example, I know at one point I was one of my teachers to do the video reflection of themselves, and so to kind of set that off to start it, you have to be vulnerable, willing to do it yourself. So I was given an opportunity and allowed to teach math lessons in all the second grade classrooms in my building, and they were all video recorded. And I had an opportunity to sit down with each teacher, and with the group afterwards to get a sense for, how did it go? How did I do? And you can see I taught the lesson 5 times. So I could see myself getting better over time.
Right.
And then, but for me, it allowed me to really understand in that short span of time what the teacher's classroom, some of the idiosyncrasies, the techniques that they use. Of course, even when I'm teaching a lesson, the teacher has come in and they're trying to help out a little bit, make sure, kind of keep me on track with things. But I think it's very important to model the way. And if I'm talking about be brave, not perfect, I have to take risk and show risk and show that I'm willing to go through these pieces as well.
Yes.
I explained before, I consider myself to be highly optimistic, but it's not blind optimism. It's you have to be realistic about the challenges that we face.
Sure.
And I think modeling the way and showing your emotions in a professional manner, obviously.
Yeah.
But let people know you can empathize with them as they're going through some of the things they're dealing with. The other one is encouraging the heart. That's really, I liken that to just making sure you know your people. I mentioned in our conversation before that each morning is very important to walk around the building and find all the faces and all the places of the building.
Yeah.
So you can look at them, look at the people, see how everyone's doing. I mean, when people are, a teacher could get a message in a parking lot, or I know how difficult it is. I see my wife where at times where we have to get the kids out the door in the morning. So that's its own special arena. Then you have to come to work and be able to teach and educate children.
Yeah,
and there could have been something that happened. You have all these things. And for me, going back to individual consideration, it's important for me to make sure that I am aware of what's going on with our teacher and understand. I want to know about their families. I want to know about their particular personal interests, but not get private life. But
sure.
I think it's important to know who they are. So because each message, the way you communicate with them, with each person is going to be different.
Right. And it's more than just a head and hands, right? They have more than a functional purpose. They have a heart, which makes them who they are, and that's something that you honor by connecting with the heart.
Yeah, and they play so many roles in life, and and even at school, they do so many things beyond the classroom.
Yeah.
So you have encouraging heart, inspiring a shared vision. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back before. Remember that garden? It wasn't people weren't inspired. It wasn't really shared. It was a vision, an idea that I have, and what I like now. I like the opportunity that I have with teachers will bring an idea to me,
Yeah.
and my first question is why not?
Yeah.
Why not? And I think that's the best way to go forward. Now,
Sure.
obviously, there's some things if it's not feasible, then
Yeah.
I'm
If it's not
honest.
safe or feasible
Right.
or you're right,
But for the
affordable or
most
something,
part,
but
teachers
yeah.
are very reflective, and we usually try to figure out a yes,
Mm-hmm.
to find a way to get it done. And we always still think about the power of yet. It might not happen now, but
Yes.
do we have opportunity to move forward at another time?
Right. And
And
is there a
so,
version of it that we could implement sooner than later, or is this a yet where we put
yes.
it in a vision board somewhere?
Yeah. And you might have to take bites of bravery along the way to get where you
Yeah.
want to go. Enabling others to act,
Yes.
but acknowledge. We ask teachers to be knowledgeable of their students. We ask our employees to be knowledgeable of their craft, but you have to be knowledgeable of them to enable them to act. So if my teacher, if I ask them, what are their goals, what are their gifts, what are they curious about?
Mm-hmm.
My job and purpose at that point is to put them in positions for them to be successful,
Right.
positions that they want to be in, find what they want to be a part of, not just make an assumption, be able to ask them about who they are, what are their goals, find resources to help them.
Yeah.
There's a saying that your budget really reflects your intentions.
Yeah.
So if you believe in professional development, do you find ways to put money aside to get those people professional development? I know in education, budget neutral is always a is
Yeah.
always a great choice.
I know.
So, but even with that, budget neutral, you can find ways to find colleagues at other districts,
Sure.
in other building,
Resources.
resources, community
Yeah.
members,
Yep.
you know, people in the community, families, different organizations, grants
Mm-hmm.
to help that cause. And then you're enabling them to act by showing trust in them as well.
Right.
And you want to sometimes teachers can or anyone could have a lot of deceptive messages they tell themselves
Mm-hmm.
because there's always been this attack on education for a long time, with teachers,
Yeah.
whether it's the glorified babysitter nonsense or
Yeah.
their
They only
summers,
work
they have
half the
they're
year.
off for their
Yeah. I
summers.
know.
Yeah,
I'm married to a teacher. My whole family is
you're right.
teachers. So
So I know personally myself as a
I get
teacher,
it.
I worked as a teacher during the week and drove the community service van on weekends
Yeah.
for the county. And I'll never forget that there were times where I had off one weekend per month because I was working full time plus doing
Right.
that part time job as well.
Yeah.
So because you have all these things that teachers are facing and dealing with, you
Yeah.
definitely want to make sure that you put them in the best opportunity and that they love coming to work and you're working together.
Yeah, and there's two things that come to mind on that one, Jabari.
Mm,
One is that with the enablement to act, I think
mm,
part of your role too is to get things out of their way.
yes.
Because if
Yeah.
they can't act because they don't have the technology, or they can't act because they've got these disruptive children in the classroom, to use teachers as an example, use the parallel in your
Yeah.
own industry for those who are listening. So part of your job is what's in your way.
Right.
How do I help you?
Well, how do you stand? I mean, your organization called Bridge the Gap. I always think about standing in the gap.
Yeah.
So
Right.
how do you get? So you may be the courage for them.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, you
Sometimes
may
you
have
just
to be
create the
that. You may
way.
have to lean on your courage to move them, move
Yeah.
them things, help move them forward.
Yeah, and the other thing that came up while you were talking about this is during this pandemic, what we know is essential workers needed to go to work.
Mm.
And what I hope we learned is that a lot of our essential workers, like the individuals whose occupation enable us to have life itself,
Mm.
are the most underpaid or underappreciated population of people, including
Yeah.
teachers and nurses, right? So I think that it kind of reminds us of when we're looking at our teams, maybe we can't give them financial compensation, but we can certainly give them appreciation and these other components that you're sharing with us.
Yeah. So that it was a model of the way, inspire, shared vision, and they encourage our challenging the process.
Yes.
Well, that is if my superintendent is watching, she knows we're very like minded, so she knows this. Challenging a process is definitely it was just the idea of challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
Doing something because you always did it that way
Yeah.
is one of the worst reasons to do anything.
I know. That's
So, as far as challenging the status quo, challenging the process, re-examining what it is that you are doing, because not old principles cannot be used in new situations,
right.
and sometimes you really have to reflect. And Zamuda and Kukless wrote a book about true transforming schools, and it talked about they spoke about your current reality and your current belief system, that those two really have to match up. If they don't align, then you're in the wrong space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are, you can either change your reality or change your beliefs.
Yes.
Is that typically what
But
you would
what you
suggest?
really want to adjust it, align it up, and it's much easier to get people to actually change their behaviors than it is to change their belief systems.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Because we can have agreements
Yeah.
on what we can really do versus the belief system instead.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think on that point about that the old way that we used to do things may not be the way that we should do things. Sometimes that's a belief. Like,
Right.
it wasn't broke, why fix it? But it doesn't make it the best. So I think there's that challenge of sometimes when people have an adversity to change or just don't understand why you would mix it up that way. So I think it's helpful for you to help them see why that would be important.
Yeah. And you have a moral, and especially because we're dealing with children and we're dealing with human lives, from the teacher standpoint through the students and through the community, is that if it doesn't meet your ultimate goal, your service,
Yeah.
if it doesn't align with your values. Lynn Morella wrote a book, Ethics, that I read it, ended up getting fired up and earlier in my career, and that's really it can really be a struggle after you read that book, because you want to make sure doing things the opposite direction of your goals or your dreams or your value system, that's not healthy. You lose credibility, and you no longer are really leading the community in the way you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. There's this comment here from Ruth that said everyone thought they knew how to be a teacher because they were once a student until they had to be a teacher, right? This whole being the parent who's now a teacher, right? There's been this amazing appreciation, which I really hope stays in this Carpe Diem
So do I.
educators on reclaiming your voice in society. Yes, totally agree with that, Ruth. So just in a nutshell, if there was somebody who was like, okay, these are really great principles. I can see how I could become, increase my self-efficacy. I can increase my transformational leadership with just those bullet points you gave, those links that you offered. But you also have mentioned to me in the past about a SWOT analysis.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a SWOT analysis is the S.W.O.T, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, there is the defensive offensive evaluation. So when I've learned that when you are looking at your strategies, if you ever recommend anything, you have to present both sides of the case. You can't just look at one side. You want to see the benefits of and what really fits.
Mm-hmm.
But the SWOT analysis is very non-threatening. It's a framework that allows everyone to participate through a perspective, and it sets the intentions. So when you meet as a group, or wherever the goal is, or like I met with with our home and school association and members of the community, and we went through this process. And we did it to take a look at how our flexible learning was going, how our the online learning was going, and what was the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we went through each step, and they had the floor. They spoke. I was quiet and listened. And what ended up happening is that they told me about the strengths, and we met twice. We went through this practice twice. And so you go through and you learn about the strengths, like what's working well, right? Then the weaknesses. And we're constantly evolving, and I know some people do not like hearing the weaknesses because they believe it's negative. It's not negative; it's growth.
Sure.
It's discomfort, and a lobster won't change its shell until it's uncomfortable and it has outgrow it.
Yeah.
So then you have the weaknesses.
Yeah.
Then you have about like what isn't working well, what are we missing. Then you
Mm-hmm.
have those opportunities. So what of this piece that we came out with this the flexible learning or the online learning. Now
Yeah.
we understand how beneficial virtual learning can be. Virtual meeting, more
Mm-hmm.
efficiency with time, finding ways. Our teachers are picking up a new skill set that they did not have before. Our
Sure.
students had to learn become our students had to learn to become more, more independent at an earlier stage than they really would have had to. And
Sure.
what I'll say here too is that we got concerned about children missing school and that people
Mm-hmm.
are missing school, they need to be in school. 1,000%, 100%. Yes, children need to be in school, but remember, school and education are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So life itself
Yeah.
was education that
Sure.
we're getting because what my own children, our children are 10 and 8. My daughter is 10, our son is 8, and they would have not. They didn't grow up. They weren't going to grow up the same way I did.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to uh, grow up and have struggle for different things
Yeah.
in their life earlier on. They
Sure.
weren't going to be exposed to violence in the same manner that I went through, and nor do I want them to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in
Yeah.
these times, they learned about how to enjoy being themselves. They learned
Mm-hmm.
about what's most essential, and I got to see who they are without all their sports activities,
Yes.
and do they hold true to themselves. They
Mm-hmm.
learned about how to occupy themselves as
Yeah,
well.
and time management, right? I mean,
Exactly,
they had classes and they had connections back to school, but it was
and as
different.
right, and as parents, you know about the helicopter parents, snowplow
Yeah.
parents, bulldozer parents. But at this time, what happens now is that the parents couldn't even do anything. I couldn't do anything because there were rules. We had to be here. It
Sure.
was there was nothing to get in the way of that learning. So
Right. And
uh,
then those,
yes,
do you believe that those weaknesses help you to see what your opportunities are?
yes, because now it's revealed to you. Because again, John Maxwell had in his podcast, he has 4 episodes to talk about blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it
Yep.
because you can be a leader, be all doing these things that you believe are great, but
Yeah.
there are blind spots. And if you're not listening to your people, like who's in your ear, who's giving you feedback, who are you
Sure.
going to let you know? Are you asking the question, what am I missing? Because you can't possibly know it all.
Right.
And if you live that right and have nothing and be okay with not having the answers,
Mm-hmm.
now you're getting some pieces revealed to you that you may not see before. And the SWOT analysis, going through the weaknesses, opportunities, and then the threats. The
Mm-hmm.
threats about like what's missing. What are the unintended consequences that may be happening that are negative for people?
Yeah.
Uh, and what are some things that we are not seeing? And
Mm-hmm.
because now it allows you to get some future forecasting because you get
Yes.
a peek around the corner and
Sure.
get to stay ahead of curve.
Anticipating.
And you're also able to have conversation in a non-threatening environment, and it's not a hierarchy. Everybody is everybody's involved in the communication, and you're
Mm-hmm.
collecting information from them to help move on to just the next step.
Yeah.
You have your proximal goals that are just close enough so you can celebrate the beginning
Yeah.
and the end. But
Like
then you
within
have
the
the
reach.
distal goal, which is down the road. But because you've been walking together and you're serving with each other and you're controlling the narrative and you're consistent in your narrative
Right.
from the start, then you're moving in the right direction.
Right.
the
It's back to
the,
that
the
vision.
the defensive and offensive evaluation is much more theoretical and underpinning. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a little different, and it can be more helpful. But I included that in some of the information as well.
Okay. Yeah. So, are you saying like choose a strategy or
Mhm.
both have value?
They both have value. SWOT analysis. If you're talking to an audience that is you don't have time, you may not have time for a bunch of theory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's non-threatening. The SWOT is non-threatening. It's
Yeah.
quick.
It opens
It
up the dialogue.
exactly. It's
You have
yeah.
to be prepared to listen. And I think that you're modeling exactly what you
Mhm.
spoke about earlier with that power of vulnerability. And one of the main things in there is about to be vulnerable, which means to be
Mhm.
imperfect, which enables people to trust you. So
Yeah.
by you opening up these discussions and being receptive to people's points of view. You're demonstrating, look, I'm not perfect. I'm doing my best, and I need your input to help us see things that we're not seeing.
And Shannon, in my heart, I believe. In my head, I'm a wonderful listener. And then I know the reality, I'm not the greatest listener. So one of my goals constantly is to remind myself is that to listen,
Yes.
keep listening, and
Yeah.
listen some more.
Great. So let's just go through a couple of key tips that you would give to everybody who's listening here. You talked about choosing love,
Yes, yeah.
self-love, and love for
True.
your people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I shared. I don't know if anybody ever seen the movie Semi Pro. Jackie Moon is a basketball player. Semi Pro is Will Ferrell,
Yep.
and it's ELE. Everybody love everybody.
Yeah.
It'll be,
ELE. That's it.
ELE. Everybody love everybody.
Right.
And because I've arrived at schools, and upon arrival, there's times I've been given feedback about a particular teacher they need to watch out for. You need to do these things, whatever. A teacher that might be marginal. But I've learned you have to, unless they're a safety risk,
Yeah.
if you connect and build relationship and build trust and learn about what's going on, talk to them and default to transformational leadership and learn, you can find a way together to help that person improve versus, well, I got to get this teacher out of here. It serves no. Love the one you're with and help them grow. It's very easy. It's easier to be dismissive of that individual. Now, safety is non-negotiable. That's different.
Yeah.
But in terms of someone who might
behavior
be
or
faltering
attitude,
or struggling in their teaching strategies or technique.
Yeah.
But again, I think love allows you to be open, allows you to be vulnerable, allows you to connect, like I said, with the community. It's the reason. It's the reason why love is the reason why I think it's important that when you're a principal, it's important to engage the families in the community. And what I mean by engaged family, you have an opportunity to lead families, control the narrative in terms of what our belief system as a community is, what are your desires of the community, how can we work together. I think that really goes a long way to make sure that, because you've heard this before, it's easier to fix a broken child than a broken man. So to do that, if we can have effect with the families to help them grow, to help them, because I'm going through it, so I'm trying to figure this thing out as a parent. But I'm on that journey too. And wherever we can share it together and grow,
humbling, isn't it?
then those children come to school, and we're all in a better place. And
Absolutely.
the parents, they know when you're in meetings with them, you're deferring judgment. You're not judging them. Your school is an antagonist environment. And when I'm engaging teachers, because and staff, no matter who you are, my job is to show love to you because you belong to someone. Your aunt, uncle, mother, whoever you are, someone loves you. You have to be supported every day. And when you leave, you have to be multiplied.
Love it. Everybody love everybody. Yay. And then you said, listen.
Yes, listen. Listen without agenda. Listen without developing your answer. And that's, many of us are guilty of that. They think we have to have an answer. Sometimes it's best to have an opinion, not to have an opinion. And I've been terrible with that because I don't have a poker face. I really wear you can see it if I'm thinking it. So I've been working on that. And if
my friend Kaya says, you got to fix your face. You got to fix your face.
Fix your face.
Oh, is it right here? Yeah, she's like, it's like a billboard.
It just sits there. I got called out in an interview after an interview when I started working with his teacher, because she swear that I rolled my eyes in the interview back. But this was a long time ago, and I don't believe I did, but she said I did. It was her experience, so I have to trust it.
Yeah. Totally.
But I made a note about self-care because I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Self-care is to find the best version of yourself. You have to bring the best version of yourself each day. Best is the foundation for better.
Yeah.
So I believe with that, what ends up happening is it's so important to have routines and rituals.
Yes.
Each morning I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. During the school year, and now that the gym is up, I'm back to 4 a.m. So I feel normal again.
Yeah.
So I wake up at 4 a.m., get up, practice journaling, gratitude journaling, is so critical. Thank you so much for the journal. It's
Yes, you're
beautiful.
welcome.
So,
Yes,
but
feeling
gratitude,
gratitude.
yes. So gratitude for the day before, for what's
Yeah,
in your life, and reflection every morning. So you're writing through that,
yeah.
writing through that, and I do that before I leave the house to go to the gym in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great workout. Then I come back home. Then I'm ready for the day mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Do my best not to check emails first thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the practices. Don't check your email because as soon as you do, you end up looking at
Get
other people's agenda for the
Mm-hmm.
day before you get to your own.
Yep.
And always, then you also, it's important to establish a to be list more than a
Mm-hmm.
to do list. If you set your intentions with who you're going to be as a human being, you can be compassionate, you can show love, you can be a listener. You can pick 3 things, 4 things about yourself that you're going to be,
Mm-hmm.
because then that makes the to-do list much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're focused. Now you know who you are. You're not straining. You're not flip flopping back and forth. You have a structure, a framework for yourself about your value system, and that everyone knows, and that you're living it.
Yep.
But self care, the way you eat, I did share with you the drink
Mm-hmm.
that I drink every morning for I believe in biohacking.
Uh,
Um, your email is proven that your digestive health, your gut health, has an impact on your overall mood, your stress, your
yes.
ability to sleep, your ability to function during the day,
Mm-hmm.
your alertness. Again, about what you're putting in your body, so that plays
Yep.
a large part. Getting your sleep, because when I go to the gym early, I know my wife. I'm guilty of sneaking off to bed like 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. So if it gets real quiet, I just creep up the steps.
Yeah, she's
Then
like,
Daddy's going to
here's my
bed.
window.
My daughter Avery likes to call me out on it too. She catches me, and she catches me just sneaking off to try to go to bed. So,
Oh my
but yeah,
gosh.
self
Yeah.
care, and
So,
then stay away from those energy drainers, energy vampires.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
surround yourself with people who sharpen you, just like
Yeah.
have opportunity to connect with you
Yeah.
and many
Likewise.
wonderful people in my life to
Yeah.
continue to grow and learn from.
Some people, I've heard it said that there's headlight people and taillight people. Like, who
Mm,
are the people that you're so excited to see them coming?
yeah,
They're like, oh, they're here. And then the taillight people are like,
yeah,
bye.
yep,
So it's like, how can you be the kind of person who, and you talked before about that,
mm,
like
yeah,
compounding your energy versus
yes,
reducing it. So,
yeah. It's
taking
so funny.
responsibility for the energy we put out. And then I'm hearing you say also surround
That's right.
yourself with people who know how to like really turn
Mm.
up the brightness.
Yeah, being responsible for the energy you're bringing to the room.
Yeah.
And I'm so fortunate. Every morning at 4 a.m., I have 2 crazy siblings. I'm the oldest. My brother is 8 years younger. My sister's 5 years younger.
Yeah.
But by 4 a.m., the texting starts going off about who's getting their workout in.
Oh. Oh, so
Yeah.
see, yeah, you've got that
So yeah,
accountability.
yeah. My brother's in
Love it.
Virginia. My brother lives in Virginia. My sister, she travels for work but lives in out the Glen Mills. But yeah,
Okay.
we that
It'd be hilarious if
accountability.
she was in London or something 5 hours ahead of you.
Yeah, we
Smoke
know
you
it's
guys.
funny, but round one workout is expected. Round two is
Yeah,
now we get text about round two. Who's
that's
gonna get round
great.
two in? So
Uh,
it's good to have that energy to kick off your day and that kind of support.
that's so good. Well, thank you for being a bright light, Jabari. You're just consistently awesome, and you always give us nuggets of wisdom. I'm so grateful for you as a friend, as a thought leader, as somebody who can hold me accountable to being a better person. And you're always so generous too. That's another thing that I appreciate about you is your willingness to
Thank you.
just teach and give.
Well, thank you very much. This is a great time to reflect opportunity. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I really enjoy this and enjoy this opportunity, and I hope the message resonated with people and they were able to connect as well. And
Yeah.
Shannon, I look forward to catching up with you again and
Yes, for
connecting and continue
sure.
to grow and keep the conversation moving.
Yes. Keep being that authentic leader that you're becoming and showing us how it's done.
All right.
All
And
right. Be
thanks, Shannon,
well.
and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.